Morning glory, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. How are you this morning on this Wednesday, February the 3rd? So much news to report to you this morning. I like to bring you up to speed by running through, just as I do show prep, I tweet stories that I like. And I start with my favorite of the morning from the Financial Times headline: WHO investigators probe Wuhan virology lab. So I first got to ask you, yeah, that's going to work, right? That's really going to work. Then I note from the Financial Times, which is probably the world's greatest newspaper, Hungary follows Poland in taking on big tech censors. Now, these are right-wing governments, Hungary and Poland, and they are upset that big tech censors are cracking down on Christians, conservatives, and dictators. Now, this is going to blindside our friends in Silicon Valley because, of course, they're used to the woke cafes of Palo Alto. They're not really used to Hungary and Poland. Big tech is run by brilliant computer scientists, many of whom never took ninth grade world history, much less AP government and AP political science, much less read broadly in newspapers. And so they're going to wonder, who's Viktor Orban and why is Hungary mad at me? And they've been so careful not to let the woke mob in the left in the United States bother them that they've ignored that there's a woke mob on the right. And so they're not going to be able to win, period. Most concerning story of the morning, in Brazil, there is a new strain of the coronavirus, which has killed 225,000 people. Now, the story says second highest behind only the U.S. Now, I like to point out we have the highest recorded number of deaths because we have the best public health statistical compilation in the world. We actually count people. We may overcount people. I think if you ask most Americans, they think significant overcounting is occurring because very old people who develop pneumonia and it's COVID-related and die, who are going to die anyway, are counted. I have no problem with that because it gives us an idea of the reach. But a lot of people think we have an overcount. But I don't take part in that debate. I just point out most of the world doesn't count. Because they can't count, because they lack the ability. So that Brazil strain, though, is a very bad deal. Not like the South African strain or the British strain. We don't know yet whether or not the vaccines that we have available to us will work there with as much efficacy as elsewhere. Meanwhile, the British Telegraph reports a great bit of news about the jabs they are giving them there. First of all, we ought to call them jabs all over the world. Better than doses, better than shots. You get a jab. Who doesn't like a jab? Dwayne's a walking jab. Everybody gets a jab. Like Ali and Frazier jabbing away, right? So it takes away a little bit of the sting, pardon the pun, of getting the vaccine. A single dose of the Oxford-Zeneca vaccine, which is the one being used in the United Kingdom, prevents 2/3 of COVID transmissions. And the first jab prevents 100% of hospitalizations. That's pretty doggone effective. Other big story, the Perry Mason impeachment rolls on. No Chief Justice, an absurdist atmosphere, dueling briefs, and everybody knows it's unconstitutional, but they're rolling forward anyway. I'm personally keeping a list of the TDS afflicted, who are simply addicted to Trump. And they're covering the impeachment trial like Americans care. Now, I want everyone who invaded the Congress, every single one, prosecuted. And I want the leaders tried on sedition and insurrection, and I want them to go to jail for a long time. Horrible day. The impeachment is a bizarre circus that is unconstitutional. My friend Ruth Marcus found a great conservative law professor, Mike McConnell, to say it's constitutional. Sorry, I go with Judge Luttig. I go with Dershowitz. I go with the plain reading of the Constitution. And I go with the 45 Republicans who said this is a kangaroo court. It's a Perry Mason, made-for-TV, absurdist political drama for the Trump addicted. Then we have an interesting couple of economic stories. There's a billionaire in the Wall Street Journal who's making big bets on this increasingly obvious story that Americans are going to continue to move to warmer climes. So he's investing in Howard Hughes Corporation, which builds in Texas, Hawaii, Las Vegas, and Maryland. I said to myself, what? I get Texas, I get Hawaii, I get Las Vegas. Maryland? Now I'm a Virginian, and as I look across the river, I say to myself, why did those people settle over there? They could have settled over here. Maryland has got ridiculously high taxes, terrible traffic, bad government, corruption, and crime. And Virginia's got Amazon. Speaking of which, Amazon. I think Jeff Bezos should be president. Now, I own Amazon stock, so you can say I'm just doing that because I own Amazon stock. And I work for the Washington Post as a contributing columnist, and so he's sort of my boss eventually. Somewhere way up there in the ether, there's a guy named Bezos who owns it. But between Bezos and me is a deputy editorial page editor, an editorial page editor, a publisher, and then there's Bezos. I've never met, talked to, seen, heard from, got a relayed message. Bezos doesn't care what his writers write. He cares about the Post. So Bezos has got this amazing company, which yesterday turned in maybe the greatest quarter in the history of publicly traded companies. Maybe. It's so astonishing that I can't even communicate to you how astonishing it is. They had fourth quarter sales of $125 billion. The whisper number was $110 billion. People were going to be happy if it got over $100 billion. It's the first time that Amazon sold more than $100 billion. They sold $125 billion. Net income. After all the COVID stuff they've been doing all year long, they spent billions and billions on COVID. They've been building new buildings all over the place, giving raises and bonuses. Net income for the quarter, $7.2 billion. The growth is phenomenal. The e-commerce sector grew by 50% last year, and Amazon got most of it. Their sales for all of 2020 rose 38% year over year. So if they made $1 in 2019, they made $38 in sales in 2020. They sold $386 billion worth of goods. I mean, I'm just telling you, it's nuts. They've added more than 500,000 employees. And people ask me, why do you own Amazon? You don't buy stocks. I said, I don't buy stocks. But Amazon isn't a stock, it's Godzilla. And so I buy Godzilla. And Godzilla might go, and Bezos announces his retirement on the day of this. They make this report on this day. Now, normally when a founder retires or when Steve Jobs dies, the stock takes a hit. That's not going to happen to Amazon because he timed it. First of all, he said, I'm leaving in 6 months. He picked the guy who runs AWS, their cloud computing thing, who's a giant brain too and a great businessman, to take over for him. And it's a 6-month runway till he lifts off. He said he's really interested in the Post, so maybe I will start hearing from Jeff Bezos. I don't know. But it's just the most phenomenal thing. And now I own Amazon stock. I don't know what they're going to do today. I know that yesterday they went up $37, and the day before that they went up $137. And they're going to, it's not a stock for trading. It's a stock for owning forever. But I'm just amazed by the guy. I just am amazed. I want to interview him. I sent a request off to a friend at the Post. I said, I want to interview this fellow. It's like interviewing Zuckerberg or Hillary Clinton or John Kerry. There are some people I want to interview. Jeff Bezos is on that list. Go nowhere, America. The worst story is yet to come on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Trending now on the Larry Elder Show.
Sally Pipes is my guest. Sally, do you think it's fair to say that the majority of Americans are really too afraid to have health care, have the private sector completely run health care? They don't trust the private sector enough to allow the private sector to run health care. They've been trained to fear the private sector and to embrace government to the point now where a discussion about unraveling government entanglement in health care we can't even have anymore?
Well, first of all, Larry, we don't have a complete private market in healthcare in this country, as you know.
Yeah.
50% of our healthcare is in the hands of government through Medicare, the program for our seniors, of which covers 65 million, Medicaid, the program for low-income people, that covers now 70 million Americans, the CHIP program, the Veterans Administration. So we don't have a private market. But the progressive liberals, like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the mainstream media, have just brainwashed the American people to say that the private sector cannot provide the kind of alternatives and different types of plans for people. So people have been completely bamboozled. But it's interesting that, 59% of people polled say they support single payer, a complete government takeover of healthcare, which Bernie Sanders wants.
Right.
But when you ask the people, 160 million of them, which have private insurance in the employer market, if you ask them, well, you're going to have to pay much higher taxes, support goes down to 37%. If you tell them we're going to take away your private coverage and everybody's going to be in a government plan, support goes down to 26%. The problem is people don't understand what it means.
And Sally, the very same people that are complaining about the vaccination rollout are perfectly content to have the government take over everything. Sally.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Eric METAXAS Show.
So let's get right to it. This is a brand new book. How do we turn our seasons around? Because a lot of us are going through tough seasons. I'm going through a slump right now. I'm hitting 220, and that's just not right.
I remember when the media would write me off and say, well, he's having a first half of the season that's not so good, but they forgot I have 82 ball games left. You have a whole second half of your season. Okay, now we've been in the middle of a struggle, crisis in this nation, and the season has to turn around. You have to go through a period. We might be going through like 8 months, 9 months, but at the end of the day, we walk into 2021, and you have to think about a fresh outlook. And I think that's what life is really all about. That's just the way God works. God works in some mysterious ways, and he works in your life to meet you right where you're at. And I think we all in the same boat today. And, for me to have a book that comes out, Turn Your Season Around, we're all going to have to turn our season around. How God transformed your life. He transformed your life if you meet him right where he's at. The thing about it is, what I laugh about, a lot of people say, well, how did you find Jesus? Well, Jesus has never been lost. We are the ones that were lost. We are the ones that have to turn our season around. And he just meets us right in the midst of our season, and he brings us to a greater understanding and the purpose of why he created us. And that's the cool thing about having a relationship with God.
The Bible is full of stories of, the Israelites up against the Red Sea. Their season was over. And then, God turned their season around.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
It's symbolic of something that is happening even in America. We're fighting back against the left's destruction of whether it's Denmark or the United States. There is fight in us. I was told by someone very high up at PragerU, meeting with donors in Colorado, and his report to me was, these people are fighting. There was a fear that the election or non-election, but the assumption
Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. I saved this story because it's a standalone story. It's awful. And it ought to make you think of every police officer, law enforcement officer, FBI agent, DEA agent, ICE agent out there. It's from the New York Times this morning. 2 FBI agents killed in shooting in Florida. By Patricia Mazzi, Adam Goldman, Johnny Diaz, and Christina Morales. The sun had not yet come up on yesterday, when a group of FBI agents assigned to investigate criminals who prey on children online approached the Water Terrace Apartments in Sunrise, Florida, near Fort Lauderdale, to execute a search warrant, a routine part of the job that is always fraught with risk. What exactly happened in the ensuing minutes is unknown, but a gun battle broke out, rousting neighbors out of bed in the quiet residential community. Law enforcement officials called emergency dispatchers. Multiple shots fired, they reported. Send air rescue. 2 FBI agents died. 3 more were injured in one of the deadliest shootings in the Bureau's history. No agent has been shot and killed on duty since 2008. A similarly bloody shootout took place in a Miami suburb 35 years ago, killing 2 FBI agents and injuring 5 others. The man being investigated in this case, which the authorities said involved violent crimes against children, had barricaded himself inside the complex and was found dead. A law enforcement official said it appeared the man had killed himself before agents were able to arrest him. His identity was not released until his family could be notified of his death. Video footage from the local police station showed a grisly scene in the open-air apartment complex. A SWAT truck had rammed into the staircase railings that lay on the ground in tatters. Bloodstains on the floor outside the apartments. The police swarmed in the complex, shutting down the roads, keeping people out of the fray. Christopher Wray, the FBI director, identified the 2 agents who were killed as Special Agents Daniel Elfin and Laura Schwarzenberger. Quote, "Every day FBI special agents put themselves in harm's way to keep the American people safe," Mr. Wray said in a statement. Special Agent Elfin and Special Agent Schwarzenberger exemplified heroism today in defense of their country. The FBI will always honor their ultimate sacrifice and will be forever grateful for their bravery. Ms. Schwarzenberger, one of the FBI agents killed, was 43, a mother of 2 from Colorado, has been with the FBI since 2005. She was part of the Violent Crimes Against Children Squad in the Bureau's Miami field office, court records show. She was assigned to the Innocent Images National Initiative, a part of the FBI's cybercrime program established to combat the proliferation of images of child sexual abuse online. Breaking from the article here, there is a world of perverted, sick criminals out there who trade in this stuff. The other FBI agent, Mr. Elfin, 36, was the father of 1 from New York. He'd been a special agent since 2009. So he basically got out of college and went into the Bureau. He was assigned to the Miami Child Exploitation Task Force. He discussed his role in an online FBI article after the 2015 arrest of a Naples, Florida man who ran what the Bureau described as the world's largest child pornography website. The site, I'm not going to give you the name, had more than 150,000 users around the world. That's how many pervs we've got in the world. Terrible, horrible people. They put their lives on the line at the hell of a price to pay, President Biden said to the agents in remarks from the Oval Office. My heart aches for the families. 2 of the Wooten agents, each of whom were shot multiple times, were transported to the hospital. The 3rd, who was shot, did not require hospitalization. The FBI squads that investigate crimes against children are considered some of the most difficult assignments because of the disturbing and graphic nature of the cases they handle. Agents typically review horrendous depictions of children being sexually exploited, images that are shared online with others. They start with a tip, they go deep, they go on forever. We have no idea, we ordinary people, of that thin blue line, in this case the Bureau line, that protects us from millions and millions of evildoers. 2 of them died yesterday. Our hats are off to the Bureau in their memory. Prayers for everyone involved. Hugh Hewitt.
now on the Dennis Prager Show.
It's symbolic of something that is happening even in America. We're fighting back against the left's destruction of whether it's Denmark or the United States. There is fight in us. I was told by someone very high up at PragerU, meeting with donors in Colorado, and his report to me was, these people are fighting. There was a fear that the election or non-election, but the assumption of the presidency by President Biden, by Joe Biden, would just knock the wind out of conservative sails. Au contraire, it has given impetus to conservative sails. There are too many of us who love this country and its values. So that's, I needed you to know that. That's the way that one works. Yep. By the way, whatever your position on the hedge fund issue, you can't deny there is fight going on. There is the Reddit people who, what at the very least, what they did, and I'm not going to get into this in detail now, but what they did at the very least is show corruption in this company Robinhood, which is a, what are they called, brokerage house? I mean, that to manipulate stocks that way, you can't undo the hedge fund's profits?
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
Ron DeSantis is a Republican, so therefore has to be portrayed as some kind of a yahoo. And Cuomo, who it was literally revealed yesterday, underreported COVID deaths in nursing homes by around 50%, he gets the victory lap. He gets the book deal. He gets the Emmy Award. These clowns, even when they're faced with horrific news, like the Attorney General in New York and her scathing report showing the disastrous response by Cuomo with his mandate that nursing homes must take COVID-19 infected people, which sent thousands and thousands of elderly people to their deaths. Well, here's CNN's take last night. Honest to goodness, this came down at like 8 o'clock at night. Headline by Chris Cillizza, CNN editor-at-large. Analysis. Andrew Cuomo's COVID-19 performance may have been less stellar than it seemed. May have been less stellar. They lied about how many people died in nursing homes because they were desperate to try to cover up Andrew Cuomo's botched response to COVID.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
Tackling the climate crisis at home and abroad. Yes, the country with the largest military capabilities with nuclear weapons is now back to fighting the climate. Just as I explained to you on a prior program when I was asked to run an exercise with colonels and half-bird colonels from the Obama administration, they too, half of the cohorts in that exercise, said that the climate was our biggest enemy. Well, here's the new Secretary of Defense. The department will immediately take appropriate policy actions to prioritize climate change considerations in our activities and risk assessments to mitigate this driver of insecurity. So I'm curious, does Secretary Austin, retired general, know what the biggest impact on the weather is, on the climate? Because it's not man-made. Whatever impact man has on the environment is negligible, truly fractal, in proportion to the effect that a large yellow fireball in the sky
Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Senate Democrats kicked off reconciliation yesterday, meaning they're going to do a jam down and try and pass $1.9 trillion in relief on 5150 votes. But they got a little bit of a spanner thrown into this plan by Joe Manchin last night, who went on Bret Baier on the Fox News Network. Cut number 17.
For it? What I have told everybody, and I made it very clear from the President of the United States to all of my colleagues, we're going to make this work in a bipartisan way. My friends on the other side are going to have input, and we're going to do something that we agree on. I'm not going to do it just down the lines of just saying party line vote. It has to make sense. And if it's out of the realm that makes sense and what we've worked on together, we've built too much trust up among each other to allow this to fall apart. So they can count on me to make sure that we do everything to make this bipartisan.
So that sounds like a no if they try to blow it down the line.
We're not going to blow it down the line. They can't do it down the line. Basically, we've got to be able, for those who are defending their numbers, whatever they may be in whatever category, they have to show where it comes from, the sources, and where the need is. We have to look at basically how much we've already spent in those arenas. There's a lot of money that's gone out the door, and we all know that. I wish we would have been able to sit down and work through a bipartisan way. They all knew that. They knew where I stood. But I wasn't going to stand and not allow us to go down a pathway. And they're going back in history, Brett. In 2009, they said I wasn't here. They tried to work on the Affordable Care Act. They worked for 8 or 9 months negotiating, and then it all fell apart. We really don't have that amount of time. If it would fall apart, I don't think it would, but that's their interpretation of it. So I said, fine, we'll start this process, but I want you to know I will vote in a bipartisan.
Meaning he's not going to go for $1.9 billion. Now, he's got one specific, all right, so he gave a specific example of one of the Joe Biden wants in reconciliation that he's not going to go for, cut number 16.
$15 an hour.
Brett, I don't think that's going to make it in because it doesn't fit within, I know it's an inside ball game, but inside the Byrd rule. The only thing we can do during this reconciliation is anything that comes within the financial realms of what we're dealing with. It's called a budget reconciliation. It has to be within the budget lines. That does not come within that at all, and it really needs to be debated. It doesn't work, and different states are different. Some states already have $15. I think anybody that goes to work in the morning and works 40 hours a week and works 50 weeks a year, that's 2,000 hours, should be above, a family of 3, above the poverty guidelines. And that's not $15.
And so Joe Manchin just said the $15 minimum wage cannot be passed on a 5150 vote, which he wouldn't vote for anyway, because it doesn't fit inside the Byrd rule. Now, for some reason, politicians are afraid to talk about the Byrd rule. The Byrd rule was invented by Robert Byrd. Robert Byrd, when they said, okay, we'll have an exception to the filibuster. Generally, you need 60 votes to pass any substantive legislation in the Senate, which means it's usually got to be bipartisan unless one party's got 60 votes. And that's only happened for less than a year when Teddy Kennedy was alive after President Obama won. And right now, Democrats have 50, so they need 10 Republicans to pass anything in the Senate. It's a big check. It's a requirement of bipartisanship. Mitch McConnell, it was frustrating to Republicans when they owned everything back in 2017 and 2018, and Republicans wanted to get rid of the Byrd rule, wanted to get rid of the filibuster, and McConnell said, no, we need it. We got to have a check on the Senate, and we kept it. So now Joe Manchin is saying $15 an hour is not inside the Byrd rule. Well, also not inside the Byrd rule, D.C. statehood. You can't expand the Supreme Court. You can't add courts. Now, COVID relief generally has some weird stuff in it. The COVID relief, which passed in December, included a statement of policy regarding the succession or reincarnation of the Dalai Lama. All right, it's got stuff like that in there, like relocation tax credits for dogs. They got Mike Gallagher grants for NFL teams that won't go for it on fourth down with Hall of Fame quarterbacks. They've got, Dave Barry and James Lilacs relief fund in light of the humor crisis sweeping America. They got all sorts of stuff in the December bill. Won't work in budget reconciliation. So how serious, because someone will stand up and say that provision doesn't qualify, it's not budget related, and then they turn to the parliamentarian and they say, is it budget related? And the parliamentarian says yes or no. And if the parliamentarian says no, out it goes. But you need the Senate to back up the Byrd rule, and Joe Manchin says this, cut number 18.
I don't think there is any. You understand, I come from the state that had a senator who served this country unbelievable. But the bottom line was he was a defender of the Senate. He used to tell me, Brett, he said, hey, Joe, he says, when I was governor, he says, let me tell you about the Senate. It's a special place. There's nothing like it in the world. He says, why do you think Rhode Island has 2 senators in California, the smallest and the largest? Why do you think that? Don't you think our founding fathers were thinking of basically how the big person couldn't press to the smaller person? Why do you think we have the filibuster? So that the minority has input. This was ingrained into me. And he said, Joe, they even named a rule after me called the Byrd rule. You know what that's there for? Why I put that in? He said, so they couldn't go around the back door and do away with it. So you're talking about a person that's going to defend the legacy of Robert C. Byrd.
And so Sinema and yourself, you're both public, but are there other Democrats you know of that would
I sure do.
not vote to bust up the filibuster?
I think there is. I really do. I think, though, they'll have to speak for themselves, but I've had good conversations, a lot of my friends, and I think there's people that feel exactly like I do. This didn't work well in 2013 when Harry Reid did it, and then Mitch McConnell did it in 2017. It hasn't worked well for anybody, okay? We should work together. That's the purpose of this.
He's talking about when Harry Reid blew up the filibuster on nominees, except the Supreme Court. Then Mitch McConnell said, no, we're going to blow it up for the Supreme Court, too. So the nominees are a straight up or down vote, which, by the way, is constitutional. Robert Byrd was talking about the filibuster in legislative and wanted legislative matters maintained. And the Byrd rule maintains that discipline when they pass the exception to the filibuster. It's for the budget reconciliation process. I'm very relieved by this. I think he's going to stick with it. That means there's going to be negotiations, and it will be. I do think we're going to get higher taxes out of this, but elections have consequences. Finally, though, he did indicate something that the Biden White House ought to listen to very closely, because Joe Manchin has the keys to the kingdom, cut 19.
Administration.
Well, the bottom line, I disagreed. I respectfully disagreed with the president in an executive order on doing away with the Keystone Pipeline. I've seen a train blow up in West Virginia carrying that crude. I've seen tanker cars explode going through towns. It's much safer in that pipeline than it is coming across the road or the rail. If they think they're going to stop that product, that's a heavy crude we need in our refineries. The bottom line is, I'm an all-in energy person, Brett, and we have to have energy basically and not depend on foreign energy. So we have to have the heavy crude. I'd rather it come from Canada than I would from Venezuela. So all of this being said, we're going to find a pathway forward. But bottom line is we can do it cleaner. You cannot eliminate your way to a cleaner global environment. You can innovate your way through technology, and that's what we intend to do. And in West Virginia, we'll build the new technology that the rest of the world can clean up the environment. Should be an opportunity. There's transition.
You see, the Bret Baier interview of Joe Manchin is what used to be the news. I have no idea what Bret Baier's politics are. He's the best newsman on TV right now because everybody will talk to him, left, right, and center. Everybody will talk to him. He doesn't get excited, doesn't try and screw you, doesn't try and ambush you, ask the important questions, ask them twice, make sure he understands. And so Joe Manchin, the most important person in the Senate, will go on with Bret Baier, and that's why special report ought to be mandatory viewing in American high schools and colleges, because it's actually the real news. And their panels are left, right, and center. Smart people. It's a news show. It may be the last news show. There's some news shows on Sunday morning, but I think actually special report with Bret Baier is the last televised news show. I really do believe that. And you ought to watch it. You really ought to watch it. Now, I don't work for Fox. I work for NBC. But I think Bret Baier's special report is the last news show. Let me check the market for you, can I? Brought to you by Birch Gold. I tell people you got to own gold because we're going to spend another $1 trillion to $2 trillion on top of $4 trillion already, which is a $5 trillion extra amount of money in 12 months. We've never done that. Total national debt's going to go close to $30 trillion. We've never done anything remotely like this, not even in World War II. Our deficit is going to reach 130% of GDP. Now, it's because of COVID. There is a reason to spend a lot of money. We probably spent too much money. But $5 trillion means, I think, I'm not a prophet nor the son of a prophet, that inflation is coming. And therefore, what do you want when you've got inflation? You want to own gold. Gold went up 0.17% yesterday to $1,836 an ounce. Great entry point. It's been as high as $1,860 in the last couple of days. Got up to $2,000 earlier this year. This looks like to me to be its stable point. It might drop a little bit, might go up a little bit until the inflation begins to show up. The acceleration of all that new money begins to roll around as the vaccines roll out. But then you want gold. You get gold from Birch Gold. You can get to Birch Gold via HughGold.com. That's their shortcut. You can remember HughGold.com. Or you can text my name, Hugh, to 474747. And they will send you free information on either buying gold or transferring a portion of your IRA or your 401k into gold. So that's who I buy my gold from. I trust them. You can trust them. HughGold.com. Yesterday, the Dow went up 475 points. The NASDAQ went up 209 points. The S&P went up 52 points. The craziness with GameStop and silver began to break yesterday. People lost their shirt. As someone said online, there is not an unlimited pool of fools, and sure enough, that which went up is coming down, but not the market generally. And Amazon yesterday, as I told you in the last segment, I own Amazon, went up $37. I don't know what it's going to do today on the basis of this quarterly report, which is just phenomenal. Google had a good month too, a good quarter. So it should be another good day on the market. But eventually, you're going to want to own some gold, put it in your safety deposit box or roll over a portion of your 401 IRA and put it into a Birch Gold administered physical gold that they keep for you in a vault. It's perfectly safe, perfectly reliable, great 5-star ratings from the Better Business Bureau customers and that sort of stuff. Head to HughGold.com. Come right back. The governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis, gave a press conference yesterday that I want you to hear. Ron DeSantis has become sort of I say there are 4 heirs to Trumpism without Trump. Tom Cotton, Mike Pompeo, Ron DeSantis, and Kristi Noem. No, I don't know where the Republican Party is going to be in 4 years when they nominate, but if it's still in sort of Trumpist land, the 4 front runners are Tom Cotton and Ron DeSantis and Mike Pompeo and Kristi Noem. Because they are Trumpism without the Trump. They're just old-fashioned conservatives, actually. And I'll play you a press conference that Ron DeSantis gave yesterday. It was great. Stay tuned.
Trending now on the Charlie Kirk Show.
You guys are not going to believe what is going on in Illinois right now. Shocking that I have to say that. It's that bad, you guys. It's beyond your wildest belief.
I'm only like peripherally aware of this, so please go ahead.
So recently, the Illinois State Board of Education approved this new rule for statewide curriculum mandates called the Culturally Responsive Teaching and Leading Standards. And right now, it's pending before the Illinois General Assembly and will be voted on February 16th to put into all curriculum for K through 12 schools in Illinois. But essentially, it's a new law that forces teachers to, in their words, embrace and encourage progressive viewpoints and perspectives. That's, fancy buzzwords, but what does that actually mean? Essentially, teachers are mandated by law to discuss current political controversies in class. They have to organize what they call action civics, which are field trips, student protests, lobbying expeditions on behalf of causes like gun control or the Green New Deal. They have to admit that there's unlimited numbers of genders and prioritize representation in the classroom.
This is in a state legislative bill.
And they're doing everything they can to bring this to the national level and essentially implement it as part of Common Core for all public schools nationwide. This is in addition to critical race theory, which is already a problem in Chicago.
Oh, it's terrible.
If you guys aren't familiar with the 1619 Project from the New York Times, that's among the most woke curriculum you could possibly imagine, but that's already been implemented to all Chicago public schools. So this is in addition to that reality.
This is statewide stuff, though.
And this would be statewide for the state of Illinois.
214, this would be in District 211. This would be all across the state of Illinois.
And you might ask, what happens if a teacher, a bold, brave teacher who's
tell me about
rational,
this.
says no? They get their teaching license taken away.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
Dinesh, we've got a new president now. He's been in office for about 5 or 6 days. What are your thoughts?
He doesn't seem to be very much in control of the situation, but he has been very vigorous in signing a blizzard of executive orders, all of which seem to me thoroughly destructive. The business about climate change, the executive orders on oil leasing and fracking. Of course, he got rid of the 1776 Commission. So he's doing all the bad stuff we warned people that he would do. And at some point, you've got to ask, isn't this going to have a very bad effect on America? A little part of me wishes that it does, because I think we have to open the eyes of the American people to what moving in a socialist direction means. So, yes, I think we're off to a very bad start. It's what we warned about, and we're about to see the fruits of it.
Well, but Dinesh, we're healing. He's reaching out to the other side and urging everybody to heal. I recall when President Trump was campaigning, Dinesh, as you know, one of the big applause lines was lock her up, lock her up. One of the first things he did was to say, I'm not going to pursue her. Quote, she suffered enough, and he felt he wanted to come.
Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt. Did you notice something unusual in the last segment? I didn't tell you about Relief Factor. I just thought I'd mix it up. Thought I'd start the segment with Relief Factor. There it is. Here it is. Did my 4 miles yesterday, 5 and 4, for the start of the week. Always got to do at least 20 miles a week. Try and get some 30s in. It's a short month. Getting to 100 miles, which is my goal per month, is going to be hard in February. So I'm going to take my curcumin resveratrol omega with my lukewarm coffee. Those of you who always get in the car at this time, I'm very aware that some of you, the average time spent listening is 23 minutes if you're a commuter. And I realize you get in the car usually at around the same time. So some of you who get in the car right now and never are in the car for longer than a half hour, never hear me talk about a Relief Factor. So I thought I'm going to mix it up once in a while and tell you people, if you have not heard me talk, I take it in the first hour, I talk about it 2 more times in the day. You've got to take Relief Factor. Join the tens of thousands of people who do it. You'll feel better every day. Support for the temporary relief of minor aches and pains that come with exercise and aging. You should be doing the former. Like me, I hold myself up as a model of diligent, decades-long commitment to upping the heart rate. And you're definitely older than you were yesterday. So you got to take it. Now, I told you about Ron DeSantis. I just love Ron DeSantis. This guy, he just comes out and deals it. First of all, he comes out and talks about big tech siding with and suppressing the Hunter Biden story, cut number 11.
See that there's no requirement for those that are posting on the internet to have any kind of regulation or any kind of accurate portrayal of events, because a lot of this is driven. The deplatforming seems to be driven by somebody who did something that provoked the platform's attention.
Well, I think it's been done in a way that's completely unprincipled. They mentioned the Hunter Biden. Hunter Biden story was true. Okay, we now know it was true. And the typical corporate media outlets, they just chose to ignore it. Obviously, they wanted to beat Trump. They had a view on the election. They didn't want to give it any air. So we rely on social media to go around that, not let corporate legacy media outlets control the discourse and let us speak. So you had the New York Post to run it, and you couldn't get any traction. You couldn't get any reach on it because big tech put their thumb on the scale. So that was true. What they said at the time, it's a conspiracy, or it's based on hacked information. Are you kidding me? You're trying to tell me if there was hacked information that could damage me, you guys wouldn't print it? Give me a break. You can whiz on my leg, but don't tell me it's raining. You guys would print it every single day if you could. And big tech would allow it to proliferate every single day, 24/7. So it's not being done on a principled basis. And it's not, there's threats on me. And it only gets taken down if law enforcement goes and tells them to do it. Otherwise, it just stays up. They're not moderating any of that. So they haven't done a good job in it. The thumb's always on the scale in one direction, and we just need to bring some protection for folks. I really, really worry when you have a business owner that may rely on some of these tools to do small business. If they engage in wrongthink or they go to the wrong political event, then all of a sudden they can act in concert and just take you off. You need to have protection against that.
DeSantis speaks clearly. Everybody understands what he's talking about. Nobody can argue with him. I mean, they can argue with him, but they're idiots if they do. Then he went on to say loud and clear, big tech, stay out of Florida elections, cut number 12.
The message is loud and clear. When it comes to elections in Florida, big tech should stay out of it. Now, big tech has long since abdicated the protection of consumers for the pursuit of profit.
I think that just stay away from our elections, big tech. Big tech is now hated by everyone in America, and with good reason. Also want you to hear John Tester, Democrat, Montana, on CNN, talking to the president about killing the pipeline. Cut number 8.
Look, I've been a supporter of the Keystone Pipeline, and there's been two caveats, and they've been basic caveats. You do it to the safest standards, and you respect private property rights. I think the Keystone Pipeline folks could have done a better job getting the Fort Peck tribe on board, and they need to continue working to do that. But in the end, I think it's a good project. I believe in climate change, but I also think that this one pipeline isn't going to turn it around, isn't going to turn our climate around, and it's not going to make it in markedly worse situations. But
it just costs hundreds of jobs. Joe mentioned no dummy. There are a bunch of Democrats who are not going to go for the crazy stuff in this reconciliation. Lindsey Graham on the floor of the Senate yesterday, cut number 4.
What a $15 hour minimum wage has to do with fighting COVID, I don't know. But I do know this. Now is the worst possible time to increase the cost on small businesses in South Carolina in the restaurant hospitality industry.
A $15 minimum wage in a federal bill would be an absolute catastrophe in states where you cannot, I mean, it's nowhere near $15. It would be a catastrophe for small business. I mean, Democrats sometimes evidence an illiteracy about matters economic that is truly astonishing. Hour number 2 coming straight up. America go nowhere except over to HughHewitt.com. On my Twitter account, I have posted the most interesting graph on COVID I've ever seen. Go look at it. Tell me what you think it means on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Trending now on the METAXAS Show.
What do we need to know about COVID that we're not hearing? What is your perspective on it right now? Because there's never been anything so confusing and so strange in my lifetime.
Well, Eric, I agree with you. And this is politics and medicine has no place at all. And unfortunately, the information, the freedom of information for patients so they can make their choices is just not out there. And so the very simple solutions that people should know as a public health editorial is prevention is very important that you can do today. Don't wait for the virus. Don't wait to get the positive test. Just start today with prevention. And there's 5 supplements you can take. There's 5 lifestyle changes that you can do for prevention. Unfortunately, it's not told, but you know what? It works. And we started back in March. We had people make sure they elevate their own immune system by 3 key nutrients. And when they increase their vitamin D levels, they increase their zinc levels, they increase their glutathione levels and vitamin C levels, guess what? These people are more resistant and resilient to all viruses, including COVID. So if they did get the case, it would be reversed quickly, or they didn't get it at all. You know how much this cost? The average person, if the government would have given everybody a $100 kit, I believe that a lot of lives would have been saved with the word prevention. We don't hear that anywhere.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
I'm just reading Coca-Cola, one of the biggest companies, has notified its law firms that it will not do business with them unless they are properly diversified. May I say that the aim of diversity over merit is not only injurious to any given profession, that's obvious to anybody, but it's very un-American. What it says to you is hard work doesn't pay, minority status pays. And that's the message of Coca-Cola. At this point, there are so many companies that are ruining the society that to boycott all of them would mean you would buy very few products. So it just came out, and I am very curious. My first question was, what does it even mean? What will they do? They'll have to submit reports, is that correct, to Coca-Cola? Coke sets diversity targets, financial penalties for outside lawyers. Coca-Cola said it will require diversity among law firms who bill it for work in the United States and reduce payments if they don't comply. The beverage giant's general counsel, a recent hire from the top ranks of Ford, disclosed the changes in a letter to law firms the company uses. Quite simply, we are no longer interested in discussing motivations, programs, or excuses for little to no progress. It's the results that we are demanding and will measure going forward, Bradley Gayton wrote.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
I often wonder if people have the ability to be objective enough to look at actual data and be truthful about things like the way Democrat-led states have responded to coronavirus and how Republican-led states have done so. For example, Florida. I go a little bit back and forth between the state of Florida and New York, so I get to see how both states are responding to COVID with lockdowns, shutdowns, or some semblance of normalcy. There is a semblance of normalcy in Florida that there is not in New York. So it's really pretty stunning to look at the difference between the way the two states and the two communities really have responded to this pandemic. But have you looked at the data? Because to listen to the mainstream media, Ron DeSantis is just some wild, out-of-control lunatic who has totally botched Florida's coronavirus response. But Andrew Cuomo, on the other hand, is Mother Teresa and has done everything perfectly, and the numbers are great, and everything's wonderful in New York. And of course, nothing could be further from the truth. If you put on a chart the deaths per capita, the illness, the infection rate, the economy, if you lay it all on a chart and compare Florida to California and New York, it's not even a close call.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
Numbers matter. And think about the fact that they always tout the popular vote as opposed to the Electoral College. That's why every vote matters. Even if you're in California, you like yourself, Victor in Maryland, every single vote matters. And this is why you never give up. It's not an excuse, but you're absolutely right from the historical perspective. Politics is cyclical. It truly is cyclical. You know, you get a Reagan because of a Carter. That's absolutely true. You get a Donald Trump because of what? Because of the betrayal of the American people by both sides of the political aisle. So the idea that simply because they managed to do what they did in November, that's it, we're done? Absolutely not. Think about one thing and one thing alone. How did they treat Donald Trump when he came down those escalators? And I don't mean just the left. I don't mean the late night talk show hosts, the quote unquote comedians. I mean the right, the establishment. Do you remember? And what happened? He trounced them all. Even after the Billy Bush tape, he was a force of nature. That's the attitude I want to see in all Americans. Be more like Donald Trump. Never, ever give up. Because that's what being an American is to me.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
Morning glory, America. Bonjour. Hi, candidates. Hugh Hewitt, joined by Jim Geraghty. Geraghty, the indispensable, with National Review. How are you, Jim?
Hugh, how are you?
Good. I tried to start a Geraghty game stock surge last week by suggesting that Politico could save their reputation by throwing a big bag of gold at you, trying to short, do a short squeeze on anti-Geraghty people. It didn't work.
I appreciate it. I appreciate your spirits sound terrific despite the disappointment of the Browns departing the playoffs. You got a playoff win. I imagine this will put you in good spirits for the rest of the year.
Jim, for the first time in my adult life, and I am 64, about to turn 65, I am happy with a Browns season. I don't remember the 64 champion. I'm actually happy. We lost in the AFC Championship game 3 times in the 80s. Those were tough. When we beat the Steelers in Pittsburgh, that's the Super Bowl. And we almost beat, we're the third best team in football.
Yeah. It sounds a little bit like Michelle Obama's "For the first time in my adult life, I'm proud of my country."
I've always been proud of the Browns, but they have been trying. What do you think of Saleh, your new head coach of the Jets?
I'm thrilled. Look, anybody was going to look good compared to Adam Gase. I know, you know how everybody feels like this pandemic has wasted a year of their lives? Imagine having 2 of those years and being coached by Adam Gase and knowing from the very beginning this was a terrible idea and nobody listened. Only one person in the whole wide world thought Adam Gase was going to be a good coach and that he had learned experiences from the Dolphins and who said, yes, this bug-eyed maniac is the who alienates all the players is that who we need. Unfortunately, that one person in the world was Chris Johnson, then the acting owner of the Jets.
Well, the Saleh guy, who's the defensive coordinator of the 49ers, was the runner-up for Kevin Stefanski, and they've got the same kind of approach. They look professional. You can imagine an athlete looking at them and saying, I'm going to listen to this guy because he looks like he's a coach. And so now the key question before I go to politics, because I always talk sports with Geraghty. Poor Geraghty. They're about Jazz, Shaw, and Geraghty, the only known Jets fans. It's like Tim Alberta and Ron Fournier on the web, Lions fans. They admit to it. Do you want to trade Darnold for Deshaun Watson and throw in every first-round draft choice you have left?
I would really like to see Deshaun Watson in green and white. My fear is, apparently the rumor is like half the teams in the league are interested, which means somebody's going to overpay. The Jets have 4 first-round picks in the next 2 years. I'd be perfectly fine giving up 2 of them and an extra player and a second and a third in the coming. You could put together a nice package, but I don't like the idea of giving up more than 3 first-rounders. And I'm hearing some people speculate about 3 or 4 first-rounders. I mean, when you can get a bunch of first-rounders for Stafford, and I believe Los Angeles has given the Rams have given up all of their first-round picks from now until I think the year 25, 27, something like that.
They're playing to win. They're playing to win.
Yeah.
But if the Jets said a first-rounder this year, a first-rounder next year, Sam Darnold, and pick any 2 of our players, you'd be okay with that?
Yeah, I'd be okay with that. There are a handful of Jets players I'd say are off limits. Quinnen Williams, folks like that. But
that's who they want.
There's about 40 guys on that roster I'd happily send in to get Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, I think Deshaun Watson in New York is a great idea. All right, Gary, let's get to politics. The Perry Mason impeachment is going forward. I call it that because it's made for TV, and it will reach a climax that has nothing to do with reality, and the papers are ridiculous. And I actually don't think America is very interested. Am I wrong?
No, because January 6th feels like a lot's happened since then. And Hugh, I will irk many of your listeners by saying, yes, I think the president deserved to be impeached. Yes, I think the president deserves to be convicted, and I think Donald Trump should be barred from ever becoming president of the United States again. All of that having been said, nothing that House Democrats have done has made sense. If you really want to persuade 17 Republicans, you don't send Eric Swalwell to be one of your House managers. You go to one of the 10 House Republicans who voted for impeachment, and you say, hey, here's the argument. I also think they're going to get bogged down into a lot of arguments about what does incitement mean, what does insurrection mean, instead of what struck me as a much easier and much more obvious case, which is what was the president doing as it was going on? I listened, Hugh, I saw the comments from Ben Sass on your program where he said that the president was gleeful or happy or something like that. If there's any indication that the White House or anybody in the chain of command slowed down the response of the U.S. National Guard to Capitol Hill, there's your impeachment argument, right? These are all, that's striking me as watertight arguments. And instead they're going with this. And I saw the other day Tim Kaine is, his effort to censure, he's dropping it, and he says he's frustrated. It's likely to end with another headline, Trump acquitted again. Well, that seems like the sort of thing you should think about before you start this whole process.
You betcha. Now, Jim, we disagree on a bunch, but nevertheless, we agree on this, that it's a Keystone Cops impeachment. And I think it's going to just show us who's got Trump derangement syndrome because they cover it obsessively and they tweet about it endlessly. I actually have begun to worry. You've never had TDS. I'm begun to worry that those who have it, that it's not like COVID. You don't get over it. I just think you're obsessed on Trump for the rest of your life. Now I want to move to, do you have Twitter handy, Jim?
I do.
Okay. Can you go over to my profile at Hugh Hewitt and take a look at the Financial Times graphs that were posted today. I reposted them on.
Oh, I did see that. That's the rainbow bridge that Thor uses to get to Asgard, right?
That's exactly what it is. Number one, that was what my first answer is. I've asked people to interpret this. Now, they show that between March 9 and 15 of last year, 412 people died a day, and that today, about 14,000 people die a day, and they tell you where they're dying. And so I think there's a couple of meta-analyses to take away here. One, it's the Thor Asgard Bridge. Do you have another meta-analysis of this?
Well, I'm reminded of, I want to say it was former General David Petraeus, who's at some hearing, and they showed him some extraordinarily complicated graph that was from the Pentagon about, the outlook in Afghanistan. And it looks as if it was like a plate of spaghetti painted by Picasso or something like that. It's absolutely incomprehensible gobbledygook. And I believe Petraeus answered something like, gentlemen, when we can figure out what that chart means, we will have won the war in Afghanistan.
Okay, this is easier. When we're done, study this, and I think you will come away with the conclusion, nothing works. It's a virus. And so it doesn't matter if you're in Europe and the United Kingdom and the rest of Europe and Latin America and the United States. It doesn't matter. And by the way, there's no China graph because they lie. Nothing works. And the only thing that works is the AstraZeneca, the Pfizer, and the Moderna vaccine. And until we get people vaccinated, nothing's going to work. That's my bottom line on this.
I think there is a strong argument. There are a lot of people who want to believe that the right policy choices will, if not eliminate the threat of the virus, then greatly mitigate it. And I think, where poor Dwayne is in California with some of the strictest lockdown rules and all the masks, requirements and all that stuff, California's getting hit really hard. One of the things that I do regularly over at the Morning Jolt and at National Review is just go through the data about vaccination rates and case rates, and there isn't this nice, simple, there are a lot of people in the media who want to believe that this is a story of good and wise blue state governors and bad and dumb and crazy red state governors, and that's why the virus is shaking out the way it is. And the numbers don't hold that up at all.
They don't, and the international numbers show it doesn't matter if you went with Sweden or if you went with Taiwan. I mean, there's some places like New Zealand and Taiwan that did really, really well, and I trust their numbers.
Yeah, if you get an island country and you're able to block all flights.
Exactly.
That worked. Beyond
exactly. I just, sometimes the obvious eludes us. But now, talk to me about what you would do if you had data, as I believe we do, that African Americans are not getting the vaccine in alarming numbers, and that some Republicans are not getting the vaccine in alarming numbers. I suspect that those Republicans correlate with rural America and may correlate with education. What would you do?
Hugh, I hear from so many people online and offline who really, really, really want to get the vaccine and can't because they're not in the right category yet, or their states are going very, very slowly. Here in Virginia, I've got one or two health issues that put me in that 1C category. And Virginia's basically told me, we'll get back to you. We'll let you know. I've heard of octogenarians who've been told you'll get it in mid-March. I've heard of septuagenarians who've been told you'll get it near the end of April. That seems like really far off, but then you look at the rate at which we're doing this. Like, it's going to take us, best case scenario, end of April to get through all the people who are higher priority, the elderly or one comorbidity, people who have one or more health factors that put them in that higher risk category. It's going really, really slowly. It's really infuriating. So I'm not that worried about people who have the opportunity to get the virus and who are turning it down, because that's one less person in front of them in line for the people who really want to get it right now.
Except that we've got to get vectors vaccinated. Otherwise, innocent people who are down in the 1D category are going to get the virus because of dummies in the 1C category. Would you stay on the line for a second, Jim? I got to tell you a horror story. Hey, America, go get vaccinated. Geraghty and I both want to get vaccinated, and the sooner we get this organized, the better off we'll all be. Don't go anywhere, America. It's the Hugh Hewitt Show. Geraghty is at Jim Geraghty on Twitter.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you in part by Harry's Razors.
Trending now on the Charlie Kirk Show.
So the World Economic Forum is meeting virtually. If you don't know what the World Economic Forum is, the World Economic Forum is a gathering of the richest, most well-connected people on the planet. They usually meet in Davos, Switzerland, which is very hard to get to. And in Davos, Switzerland, a lot of very big globalist ideas are introduced. And so this is talked about sometimes in conservative circles as the Davos agenda or as the kind of globalist agenda. This is their Super Bowl. This is where they do their planning and their announcements. This is where you'll have the Bill Gateses of the world, the Jeff Bezos of the world, the heads of state from around the world gather, and they basically say, how can we destroy sovereignty of our nations? How can we try and have free flow of people and make ourselves more important? Now, we have gone into great detail in this program in the Great Reset, what the Great Reset is, where they do not want people to own property. You will eat less meat. I kid you not, that's part of the list. And you're going to be happier. You hear that? You're going to be happier. And if you don't, you got a problem with that?
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
Sally Pipes is my guest. Sally, do you think it's fair to say that the majority of Americans are really too afraid to have health care, have the private sector completely run health care? They don't trust the private sector enough to allow the private sector to run health care. They've been trained to fear the private sector and to embrace government to the point now where a discussion about unraveling government entanglement in health care we can't even have anymore?
Well, first of all, Larry, we don't have a complete private market in healthcare in this country, as you know.
Yeah.
50% of our healthcare is in the hands of government through Medicare, the program for our seniors, of which covers 65 million, Medicaid, the program for low-income people that covers now 70 million Americans, the CHIP program, the Veterans Administration. So we don't have a private market. But the progressive liberals, like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the mainstream media, have just brainwashed the American people to say that the private sector cannot provide the kinds of alternatives and different types of plans for people. So people have been completely bamboozled. But it's interesting that, 59% of people polled say they support single payer, a complete government takeover of healthcare, which Bernie Sanders wants.
Right.
But when you ask the people, 160 million of them, which have private insurance in the employer market, if you ask them, well, you're going to have to pay much higher taxes, support goes down to 37%. If you tell them we're going to take away your private coverage and everybody's going to be in a government plan, support goes down to 26%.
And
the problem is people don't understand what it means.
And Sally, the very same people that are complaining about the vaccination rollout are perfectly content to have the government take over everything. Sally.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt. Got some hate mail yesterday because I told people, this is how radio works. I told people never under circumstances, if you are a man, watch How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. I did say that. Did you hear me say that, Dwayne? I did say that yesterday.
Yes, we did a segment on that.
We did a segment. And so, of course, people went out and watched How to Lose a Guy in Under 10 Days. And, of course, they hated it, and they blamed me. I don't understand. If you're not going to follow my advice, you can't blame me for giving you the advice. That's all I've got to say. Now, I want to do a market report brought to you by our wonderful sponsors, andrewandtodd.com with Sierra Pacific Mortgage. I say wonderful because yesterday they closed a refinancing for a family member. I mean, it's like first cousin, once removed, shirt tail relative, that I never thought would get done. It's just the goofiest thing in the world. They got 2 houses and it's just an extraordinarily difficult. It's not a cookie cutter refi. And they got it done in about 3 weeks. And I said to andrewandtodd.com, I don't believe you guys know what you're doing. You're actually closing loans. And Andrew laughed. They are closing more loans. So if you need to buy a house or refinance a house, I don't care who you are, veteran, first-time home buyer, senior citizen wanting a reverse mortgage, completely bankrupt, you've got the worst credit in the world, or you are a billionaire and you don't have any income, so you don't have a W-2, just go to andrewandtodd.com or call them at 888-888-1172 because the 10-year Treasury is at 1.1%. So if you're going to buy a house ever and borrow money, do it today. Now, I love markets. The market report is yesterday the Dow went up 475 points, the NASDAQ went up 209, and the S&P went up 52. Before Google reported volcano-like earnings, and before Amazon left financial analysts stunned and on the floor. That's because of 2 things. They got the first breaking news at 4 o'clock. Every Amazon employee in the world, all 500,000 of them or a million of them, whatever they are, got an email from Jeff Bezos who said, hey, friends, 6 months I'm going to become the executive chairman. Not to worry. We've got the new CEO. He runs AWS right now. Really smart guy. Don't worry. So Bezos is retiring, not retiring. And financial analysts everywhere clutched at their hearts and said, what does this mean? Founder is retiring. When Jobs died, the stock crashed. And then 5 minutes later, Amazon, and I own Amazon, and I work for the Washington Post, disclosures I always give. I write for him. I've never met Bezos. I want to interview him, but he wouldn't know me from Adam, and I think I'd recognize him as the Lex Luthor lookalike that people mock him for being on Twitter. But I have alleged conflict, so I always put that in. So then they released their earnings, which are so incredibly big, no one can describe them because they've used up all their adjectives. So they get these 2 pieces of information, and for the first time ever, there's an earnings report, and nobody reacts. It's like the NFL went to the instant replay like they normally do, and the game stops for 25 minutes. Only this stopped for 12 hours. They still don't know what to do. I've been watching pre-market trades, early market trades, trades overseas, and they're looking at these 2 bits of information. Bezos says he's retiring, not retiring, and they had the best quarter in the history of publicly traded companies. What do we do? And it's just great. I don't have a takeaway. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm not selling any Amazon, but I'm not a prophet nor the son of a prophet. All I can tell you is interest rates are at 1.01% or 1.1%, and you ought to go buy a home today. And if, by the way, you are a mom or dad and you've done pretty well in life and you've got good credit, you paid off your house, but you've got kids or a kid or grandkids and they don't own a home, become a non-occupying co-borrower. In other words, sign on the dotted line with them so that they can get this rate, because they're never going to get this rate for the rest of their life. So just call up Andrew and Todd at 888-888-1172 and said, you want the Hugh Hewitt special. They won't have any idea what that means. Harley, call them up and tell them that it means the the non-occupying co-borrower. That's the Hugh Hewitt special. Just blow up their phones for a day. I want to get back at them. 888-888-1172. It's the Hugh Hewitt Show. I'll be right back.
Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
Dinesh, we've got a new president now. He's been in office for about 5 or 6 days. What are your thoughts?
He doesn't seem to be very much in control of the situation, but he has been very vigorous in signing a blizzard of executive orders, all of which seem to me thoroughly destructive. The business about climate change, the executive orders on oil leasing and fracking. Of course, he got rid of the 1776 Commission. So he's doing all the bad stuff we warned people that he would do. And at some point, you've got to ask, isn't this going to have a very bad effect on America? A little part of me wishes that it does, because I think we have to open the eyes of the American people to what moving in a socialist direction means. So, yes, I think we're off to a very bad start. It's what we warned about, and we're about to see the fruits of it.
Well, but Dinesh, we're healing. He's reaching out to the other side and urging everybody to heal. I recall when President Trump was campaigning, Dinesh, as you know, one of the big applause lines was lock her up, lock her up. One of the first things he did was to say, I'm not going to pursue her. Quote, she suffered enough, and he felt he wanted to concentrate on his own agenda. When is Biden going to pick up the phone, Dinesh, and call Schumer and call Pelosi and say, call off the dogs? This is an idiotic trial, and we shouldn't be wasting the American people's time with it.
Well, the very fact that they're pushing ahead with it, I mean, it looks like they may have up to 5 Republican votes, not even necessarily 5 for conviction, 5 just for hearing it. And the other 45 would have thrown it straight out.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Eric METAXAS Show.
What do we need to know about COVID that we're not hearing? What is your perspective on it right now? Because there's never been anything so confusing and so strange in my lifetime.
Well, Eric, I agree with you. And this is politics and medicine has no place at all. And unfortunately, the information, the freedom of information for patients so they can make their choices is just not out there. And so the very simple solutions that people should know as a public health editorial is prevention is very important that you can do today. Don't wait for the virus. Don't wait to get the positive test. Just start today with prevention. And there's 5 supplements you can take. There's 5 lifestyle changes that you can do for prevention. Unfortunately, it's not told, but you know what? It works. And we started back in March. We had people make sure they elevate their own immune system by 3 key nutrients. And when they increase their vitamin D levels, they increase their zinc levels, they increase their glutathione levels and vitamin C levels, guess what? These people are more resistant